VideoMaster Home TV Game Console. One of the first clones of the home Pong console. Here are 3 typical versions of this game: tennis, football, squash. Tennis is not surprising, as it is essentially the same as Pong. In football, there is already a restriction in the form of goals, and you don't have to defend the entire wall from the ball. Squash blocks the right side, so you need to make the opponent miss the ball when it rebounds from the left side. Super Flipper Arcade. Formerly, this is an analog of pinball. But here, there is no realistic simulation of typical buttons. Everything is replaced here with paddles, like in Pong. In essence, this game is a hybrid of Pong and pinball. Usually, an electronic version will be made later, making it quite a funny specimen. Street Burners Arcade. This is a racing game for 1 or 2 players. Here you will drive on a straight track and try to avoid much smaller cars that come your way. These cars will not only be smaller, but will also be in the form of rectangles. It's clear right away, they are not your equals. You control it with a typical steering wheel and pedals. It's also worth noting the very intense sound that increases with speed, probably to make you lose faster and insert another coin. Ping Pong Altair 8800. This is a version of Pong on the very first version of this early personal computer, when there was neither a monitor nor a keyboard, only flashing lights and toggle switches. It's also worth noting that this is a one-dimensional version of Pong, where you don't need to move the paddle but just press the button at the right time, not too early and not too late. Odyssey 200 Console. And here is the response from the manufacturer of the first console. The response turned out to be one of the most solid among other imitators. There were quite a few possible settings here. For example, you could set the position of the central line and the speed of the ball. The console kept track of the game score, which was not available to all imitators. Control was done with 3 handles: vertical, horizontal, trajectory adjustment. You could play not only in pairs but also with 4 players. The console included 3 games: tennis, hockey, and smash, which was a fairly typical set for that year, and I talked about very similar variations in the first example from this video. All list top 50 games. Thanks for the likes, comments and reposts. Odyssey 100 Console. In the previous video, I talked about a later version of this console, but since this version was the base model, I will place it higher on the list. Compared to many other Pong console clones, this console had several improvements, such as the ability to move paddles not only vertically but also horizontally. You could also move the central and side lines. It allowed you to adjust the ball's speed and trajectory during the game. All these features were controlled by 3 different knobs. Maneater Arcade. Each player here controls a swimmer in waters infested with sharks. You need to collect items at the bottom and bring them to the surface, avoiding sharks whenever possible. The game has both single-player and 2-player modes. Knockout Arcade. Actually, I made a mistake by confusing this game with a game on the same arcade machine but in 1985. The only difference in the name is the absence of a hyphen, but these are completely different games. Nevertheless, I included it here, and I'll still say a few words about it. It's a Pong clone where players try to knock pegs to the other end of the screen. The winner is the one who knocks them all first. Kill the Bit Altair 8800. This game is for an early version of a computer that didn't have a monitor or keyboard, so all actions were carried out using switches on the front panel. Each time before playing it, you had to program it manually. Your task in the game is to press the right switch at the right moment while it moves back and forth along the track of indicators. If you miss, another bit is created that also needs to be destroyed. To win, no bit should blink or move. Interceptor Arcade. The player controls a first-person jet fighter. You must shoot down enemies flying around you. You'll be controlling it with an 8-position joystick. Opponents fly in formation and try to evade your fire. The farther they are, the smaller they appear on the screen. Goal 4 Arcade. This is soccer implemented through the Pong concept. The arcade machine itself is horizontal, resembling a table. In single-player mode, you try to score a goal by hitting the ball into moving gates. In the multiplayer version, you have a goalkeeper and 2 attackers. If there are more than 2 players, these roles are distributed separately. Also, a more defensive player has 3 paddles for control, while a more offensive one, closer to the opponent, has 2 paddles. F-114 Arcade. It was a quite ambitious game for that time. Here, you sat in a cockpit, which you moved with a joystick to more realistically simulate a fighter jet's cabin. The screen was semi-curved, as the image was projected onto it. In addition to planes, the targeting reticle and explosions were projected on the screen. Electro-tennis console. It was one of the first Pong console clones, this time from Japan. Movement could be made in 2 directions, horizontally and vertically. To display the score, dials on the console itself had to be used. The most notable feature was its completely wireless architecture. The console itself could run on batteries, and it interacted with the TV through a wireless television signal. Drop Zone 4 Arcade. Here, you control only with one button. The plane will fly on its own without your control. Your task will be to release bombs in a timely manner to hit moving targets below. You will be given 15 projectiles for this. After some successes, the speed of your plane will increase. Avenger Arcade. This is a top-down scrolling game where you control a fighter and try to shoot down enemy planes. Enemies appear from the top along with a scrolling layer of clouds. You have a boost button for a short-term increase in speed. Depending on the points earned, you get additional time and the final rank of the pilot, Stormer, Pilot Apprentice, Ace, Avenger. All list top 50 games. Thanks for the likes, comments and reposts. Panther Terminal. This multiplayer game allows players to join one of 2 teams, represented by square or triangular objects symbolizing vehicles. The graphics are vector-based, enabling real-time gameplay. Explosions are generated through animated computer characters. In each game, 5 mountains appear randomly in various locations and sizes. Players are given some time at the beginning to familiarize themselves with the terrain. In addition to a first-person view, players can access a shared map showing allies and enemies detected by their team. The game emphasizes teamwork, as each unit possesses unique skills. Some excel at tracking, others at combat, and some are better suited for infiltrating the enemy base and initiating bombardment, among other roles. Players can communicate through in-game chat and send special taunts to opponents. Moria Terminal. A role-playing game that involves exploring dungeons with up to 10 players simultaneously. The graphics are vector-based, with a first-person view, and players can communicate through a chat system. Movement in the game is turn-based, and combat can be conducted using weapons or spells, depending on the character's randomized attributes at the beginning of the game. Survival requires attention to both food and water, and characters can even die from old age. The game world is multi-layered, featuring a city for buying, selling items, interacting with guilds, and surrounding areas with weaker monsters. There are 4 types of dungeons: caves, mountains, forests, and deserts, each with up to 60 levels of difficulty. An oceanic dungeon was later added. To avoid getting lost, players can attach ropes to items, provided monsters don't chew through them. A group of up to 10 people can be formed, led by a chosen guide. Pedit 5 Terminal. A dungeon-crawling role-playing game designed for solo play rather than interaction with other players. Despite vector graphics, the game has a top-down perspective. Players traverse a one-level dungeon with 50 rooms, where only monsters and objects are randomly generated during character creation. Encounter options with monsters include fighting, casting spells, or fleeing. Once a battle begins, it unfolds automatically without player intervention. The name is derived from the Plato Educational Environment folder where the program operated. D&D Terminal. A role-playing game inspired by the popular tabletop game Dungeons & Dragons. The game features vector graphics with a top-down view. Players explore a multi-level dungeon called Wizenwood to find 2 great relics, the Grail and the Sphere. Players can ascend and descend levels, knowing the transitions between them. It's possible to leave the dungeon to restore strength and spells. While exploring the 20-level dungeon, players often find gold, which can be used to increase health and spells but may be guarded by trapped chests. The most powerful monster is the Golden Dragon, guarding the sphere. Once obtained, players must traverse all levels upward, encountering formidable monsters continually. Pursuit Arcade. In this game, players assume the role of a pilot attempting to shoot down enemies from a first-person perspective. The control scheme involves a classic joystick. Players pilot a biplane from World War I. After this game, it became publicly known that Key, a game developer, is a subsidiary of Atari. Shark Jaws Arcade. You play as a deep-sea diver hunting for fish while being pursued by a shark. Your objective is to devour fish with your character while avoiding the shark. Originally, Atari attempted to license this well-known movie franchise, but eventually opted for a clever workaround. The arcade prominently displayed the word Jaws in large letters, with the word shark written inconspicuously in smaller letters. Points are earned for each fish consumed. The unique aspect of the game is that you have no lives. You lose when caught by the shark, consuming the remaining time. Jet Fighter Arcade. In this game, you control a fighter jet attempting to destroy enemy aircraft. Upon a successful hit, an explosion occurs, and after a while, another enemy appears at the destroyed one's location with a random initial movement. The game is timed, and your achievements either add or deduct time, which you must use to destroy the enemy a greater number of times. If the plane approaches the screen's edge, it continues its movement from the other side. Here, you can slow down to maneuver better or make a quick dash. Highway Arcade. One of the first arcade games that allowed players to sit rather than stand. Here, you take on the role of a racer. Your task is to drive on a winding and narrow road with two-way traffic. You earn points for each overtaking maneuver, while collisions slow you down without earning points. Deceleration also occurs when you go beyond the road boundaries. Crossfire Arcade. This is a two-player shooter. Each player has their weapon positioned on the sides of the screen, movable up and down. In the center of the screen is a ball and several bumpers. The goal is to push the ball to the opponent's side. Bumpers interfere and make the ball bounce unpredictably. The winner is the one who scores more goals. Anti-Aircraft Arcade. Here, you play the role of an anti-aircraft installation shooting down planes flying overhead. Planes can fly solo or in pairs, and your goal is to shoot down as many as possible within the allotted time. The game features two cannons at different angles for two players, competing to see who can shoot down more planes. Control is limited to 3 buttons: up, down, and shoot, with only 3 angles for firing. Crash and Score Arcade. In this game, you control a car, aiming to knock down as many numbered flags as possible within a limited time. The required flag starts flashing until you hit it. You score the number of points indicated on the flag. Colliding with a non-flashing flag significantly slows you down. Collisions with obstacles can also slow you down or even turn your vehicle. In the 2-player mode, cars can collide with each other. Moving beyond the map's edge brings you back on the opposite side. Deep Space Apple II, Commodore PET, CBM, Mainframe. This is a text-based space combat simulator. At the beginning, you are given several options that will influence your game in the future. First, you choose one of 3 starting locations, then one of 3 types of spacecraft, and finally, you select the ultimate equipment. Each type of spacecraft differs in speed, weaponry, and defense level. All actions are performed using specific keys. You have the following options: fire one of up to 4 types of weapons, activate the neutron field, self-destruct, change speed, disable, continue at the current speed. Weapons not only inflict different damage but also take up different space on the spacecraft. Some weapons can harm you at close range. Top 3. Gunfight Arcade, Bally Astrocade. This is a single-screen shooter. In this game, 2 players compete as cowboys in the Old West. It was the first game to depict human-to-human combat. When hit, the character falls to the ground, and the text, "Got me," appears. Control is through two joysticks, one for movement and the other for aiming. Obstacles often appear in the middle of the screen, such as cacti, but they can be destroyed by shooting. Later, the cactus is replaced by a stagecoach. The game is limited both in time and the number of bullets, 6 of them. The winner is, of course, the one who hits more times within the given time. Bullets can bounce off the top and bottom edges, making the game somewhat more unpredictable. Top 2. Wumpus 2 Apple II, Commodore PET, CBM, DOS, Mainframe, TRS-80. This is an updated version of Hunt the Wumpus. The gameplay is not significantly different, but there are important distinctions. The goal of the game is to kill the mythical creature Wumpus, which inhabits caves. The cave consists of 20 rooms, and dangers such as pits and bats are encountered in them. The game will provide you with clues to explore the cave and find where Wumpus is. For example, a gentle breeze indicates a pit in a neighboring room, while a smell indicates Wumpus in one of the adjacent rooms. The player must decide whether to shoot an arrow or move. If you enter a room with a pit or Wumpus, you die. Bats, on the other hand, transport you to a random room. In the first game, there was a simple cave layout. You exited from one side, and there were always 2 paths to the next rooms. In the second part, 5 more types of layouts are added, for example, when there is only 1 passage forward, or 3 instead of the usual 2. Top 1. Steeplechase Arcade, Atari 2600. This is a racing game where you control one of 7 horses, 1 for the computer and 6 for players. It involves obstacle racing. You must press the button of your color in time for the horse to jump over the obstacle. If you delay, the horse slows down for a while. The more precise your jump, the faster the horse runs. The game has several modes where you choose the placement of obstacles, evenly or with varying distances, as well as the difficulty of the computer-controlled horse. In 1980, Atari ported it to their home console. All list top 50 games. Thanks for the likes, comments and reposts.